I held my daughter close, her breathing gone ragged, and knelt in the snow, pounding on the door like a man possessed. On the video doorbell screen, my wife Susan was raising a glass with her high school sweetheart. Susan, Nora can't breathe. Open the door and give me her medication. Susan let out a cold laugh, her voice cutting like frostbitten air. Ethan, are you seriously pulling this act just for that little bastard of yours? She's your own daughter. She's only 5 years old. Susan's first love chuckled from beside her. Babe, I heard that little side piece of his has asthma too. Runs in the family, I guess. Susan's eyes went cold in an instant. Ethan, if you love playing the victim so much, then take your little bastard and freeze to death out there. The next second, the second-floor window swung open. A basin of ice water came crashing down, and the moment it hit my daughter, it turned to frost on her skin. Nora convulsed in my arms. She looked up at the window one last time, and in a voice barely above a breath, she called out, Mommy. The ice water soaked through my collar and down my spine, freezing solid almost instantly. Nora shuddered violently in my arms. The sharp, desperate wheeze that had been her breathing was suddenly cut off, like something invisible had reached down and squeezed her throat shut. Her whole body went rigid. Her tiny hands locked onto my collar, knuckles white. Nora, don't be scared, Daddy's here. I threw my body around her like a shield, trying to melt the shell of ice forming over her with whatever warmth I had left. From a second-floor window came the sound of Susan laughing, free and unbothered. Wow, Oscar-worthy performance. What a waste of talent. She swirled a glass of red wine, looking down at me from above like I was a dog sprawled in the snow. Jason stood beside her, one arm around her waist, watching the whole thing with a grin. Babe, look at him shaking. Someone who didn't know better might actually think he was freezing. That water had ice cubes in it. Figured these two needed cooling down before they started embarrassing themselves. I looked up, the corners of my eyes burning, every blood vessel ready to burst. Susan, are you even human? That is your biological daughter. Nora's asthma is real. Her inhaler is on the living room table. Please, just throw it down to me. Whatever you want from me, I'll do it. Just give me the medication. In that moment, dignity, pride, every last shred of my self-respect. I threw it all away without a second thought. All I needed was for my daughter to live. Susan took a slow sip of wine, her expression dripping with contempt. Biological daughter? Ethan, you have a lot of nerve. If your people hadn't forced my father's hand back then, do you think I would have ever married a deadbeat like you? That child has your worthless blood in her. She makes me sick just looking at her. Jason leaned in close to Susan's ear, his voice deliberately loud enough to carry. Babe, forget about him. Today's my birthday. Don't let this trash ruin the mood. Although, with the snow coming down this hard, if something actually happened. Susan let out a short, cold huff and turned back into the room, returning with something in her hand. It was Nora's asthma inhaler. Hope ignited in my chest. I shuffled forward on my knees, reaching out. Give it to me. Susan, please, give it to me. Susan dangled the inhaler between her fingers, a slow, cruel smile spreading across her face. Want it? Then beg. Bark like a dog. Give me 2 good ones, and I'll think about it. In my arms, Nora's breathing was fading. Her lips had gone from blue to nearly black. Her eyes were half open, pupils losing focus, but she was still instinctively curling into my chest. The will to survive. My heart felt like it was being sliced apart, piece by piece. I ground my teeth until my jaw ached. A low, broken sound tore out of my throat. Woof, woof. For my daughter, I would give up everything. Susan and Jason exploded into laughter. Jason doubled over, pointing at me. Babe, look at him. He literally sounds like a dog. Well, if he's a dog, he should go fetch. Susan flicked her wrist. The inhaler traced an arc through the air. It didn't come to me. She hurled it straight into the garbage can in the corner of the yard, the one overflowing with filth. Go get it. If you find it, it's yours. Though with snow this deep, by the time you dig it out, I'd say that little bastard of yours will be stone cold. The window slammed shut, cutting off the warm light and laughter inside, leaving only the howling wind, the endless snow, and me. Nora, hang on. Daddy's getting the medicine. Daddy's going right now. I set her down in the corner of the wall where it was slightly less exposed, pulled off my soaked, half-frozen jacket, and draped it over her. Then I crawled toward the garbage can on all fours. The snow was thick. Every inch forward felt like dragging myself over broken glass. But I couldn't feel the pain. My mind had only one word in it: medicine. Medicine. Finally, I toppled the garbage can. Reeking kitchen waste spilled across the snow in a wet, filthy mess. I tore through it with my bare hands, glass slicing open my fingers, blood running hot into the cold. There, the blue inhaler. I snatched it up and scrambled back to Nora, half crawling, half falling. Nora, I've got the medicine. Open your mouth. With shaking hands, I pressed the inhaler between her lips and pushed down. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing came out, just a hollow hiss. I went still. In the dim glow of the streetlight, I read the label. It was last month's empty canister. Susan had lied to me. She'd done it on purpose. From the very beginning, she never intended to let Nora live. Despair swallowed me whole, like a black hole opening beneath my feet. I gripped the empty inhaler, my fingernails digging into the plastic hard enough to crack it. Susan, I screamed into the sky, a sound so raw and broken it didn't even sound human. In my arms, Nora had stopped convulsing. She'd gone soft and still. That terrible silence was more terrifying than the desperate gasping had been. Nora? Nora, don't scare Daddy. My hand shook as I checked her breathing. Almost nothing. Her warmth was draining away fast, like a piece of metal cooling after the heat is cut. I couldn't just stay here. This was a private hillside neighborhood. The snowstorm had cut off the road. An ambulance couldn't get up here. The only way out was inside. Heat. An oxygen bag. The real medication. I scooped Nora up and threw myself at the front door. Bang, bang, bang. I used my body, my head, my fists. I slammed against that heavy wooden door with everything I had. Susan, open up. That was an empty canister. Nora's not going to make it. Please, just let me in. You don't even have to let me in. Just let Nora in. I'll stay out here. I won't set foot in your house. Blood ran down from my forehead and into my eyes. I couldn't feel it. The video doorbell flickered on again. On the screen, Susan was cutting a steak, her movements calm and composed. Jason sat across from her, casually twirling a fresh blue inhaler between his fingers. Nora's real medication. So annoying. Susan furrowed her brow, looking thoroughly inconvenienced. Ethan, are you done? It's the middle of the night, and you're out there wailing like a ghost. We're trying to eat. I pressed my face against the camera lens. My blood smeared across the glass. Susan, that was an empty one. If you want to hurt someone, come after me. Leave Nora out of it. Give me the medication. Unlock the door. Jason held up the inhaler and gave it a little wave at the camera. Oh wow, looks like we grabbed the wrong one earlier. Babe, he seems pretty desperate. Maybe we should get it to him. He wore a saint smile, but his eyes were full of amusement. Susan sliced off a piece of rare steak and chewed it slowly. Give it to him? Why? He barked like garbage before. No sincerity whatsoever. Want to come inside? Fine. She set down her knife and fork and dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. Get in the dog cage. Stay in there for 1 full hour without coming out, and I'll have someone bring the medication to you. In a corner of the yard sat a large iron cage. It was the kennel for Susan's 2 Tibetan Mastiffs. Those dogs only ever listened to Susan. They had never treated me as their owner to show me teeth. Right now, both of them were in the cage, barking furiously at me and Nora. Saliva dripped from their fangs and hit the snow, steaming in the cold. Not going to do it. Susan's voice dropped, then freeze to death out there. Honestly, that little bastard dying would be a gift. One less person to split the inheritance with later. You have 3 seconds. 3, 2. I looked down at my daughter. Her face was white as paper. Frost had gathered on her eyelashes. She looked like a shattered porcelain doll. I had no choice. I'll do it. I'll do it. Don't cut the feed. Don't cut it. I carried Nora and stumbled toward the kennel. The 2 mastiffs saw me coming and lunged at the iron bars, unleashing a roar that rattled the whole cage. I set Nora down in the most sheltered corner outside the cage and peeled off my last layer, my sweater, and wrapped it around her. I had nothing left but a thin dress shirt. Be good, baby. Daddy's just gonna put on a little show for Mommy, and then she'll give you your medicine. I pressed my lips to my daughter's ice-cold forehead. Then I pulled open the iron door and climbed inside. Both mastiffs launched themselves at me instantly. Their teeth sank through my arm, tearing at my flesh. The pain was blinding. I bit down on my lip and made no sound. I couldn't scream. If I screamed, Susan would be displeased. If she was displeased, she wouldn't give me the medication. I curled into a corner thick with filth and let the dogs tear at me. My blood soaked red into the snow. On the video doorbell screen, Susan and Jason were laughing so hard they could barely breathe. Incredible. This is incredible. Jason clapped like he was watching a gladiator fight. Babe, look at this pathetic creature. Even the dogs don't respect him. Susan sipped her wine, her eyes bright with satisfaction. This is what happens when you cross me. Ethan, you used to be so proud, didn't you? Tell me, how exactly did you force me into this marriage? Now I'm going to grind you into the dirt. You will never, ever get back up. The seconds crawled by. Every one of them felt like a year. My vision was going dark. Blood loss and cold were pulling me under. But I kept my eyes locked on Nora through the bars. As long as she was still alive, I could hold on. Finally, the hour was up. Susan, time's up. I turned toward the camera and pushed the last of my strength into my voice. The medicine. Susan yawned, like she'd nearly dozed off. Oh, I got so caught up watching I lost track of time. Fine, since you've been such a good boy. Jason, go. Take him the medicine. Jason stood, grabbed the inhaler, and walked out onto the second-floor balcony. I dragged myself out of the cage, crawling on ruined legs, and pulled myself to the spot beneath the balcony. Ready to catch? Jason smiled and let go. The inhaler dropped straight down. I reached up with both hands. And then, in the split second before it landed, a basin of foot-washing water came pouring off the balcony. The force of it knocked the inhaler sideways, sending it crashing into the stone several feet away. The blue plastic shattered. The medication inside spilled across the snow and was swallowed up in seconds. Jason covered his mouth in mock surprise. Oh no, Butterfingers. What do we do now? The medicine's gone. Ethan, looks like even God doesn't want to save that little bastard of yours. That sound, plastic shattering on stone, went off like a thunderclap inside my skull. I stared at the dark stain spreading through the snow where the medication had been. That was Nora's last chance. Gone. All of it gone. No. A sound ripped out of me that I didn't recognize, raw and animal and broken. I clawed at the ground with both hands, trying to scrape up the snow that had swallowed the liquid. Even a little. Even one drop. I cupped a handful of dirty, contaminated snow and crawled back to Nora on my knees. Take it, baby, come on, the medicine. I tried to press the snow to her lips, but her teeth were clenched shut. Nothing was getting through. Her body had gone completely cold. No movement at all. That silence hit me like a blade driven through my chest and twisted. No, no. My hands shook as I reached for her pulse. Nothing. I checked her breathing. Nothing. I pressed my ear to her chest. Nothing. My entire world collapsed in that moment. On the second-floor balcony, Susan and Jason were still laughing. Look at him trying to feed her snow. Huh, father-daughter bond, truly moving stuff. Susan leaned lazily against the railing, a slim cigarette held between her fingers. Ethan, drop the act. You've had your fun. Now, take your little bastard and get off my property. You're ruining the vibe. I raised my head slowly. No tears on my face. Just blood and melted snow. My eyes were empty, hollow as a dried-out well, fixed on Susan without blinking. Something in that look made her pause mid-laugh. She frowned, almost involuntarily. What does that look? What? You want to kill me? Think you've got what it takes? You worthless piece of nothing. I didn't answer. I just reached down, gently, carefully, and lifted Nora into my arms. She was so light. Light as a feather. 5 years old, and she barely weighed 45 pounds. Because Susan always said girls needed to watch their figures. Don't eat too much. Because Susan always said asthma was a rich girl's condition. Skip a few meals, it'll clear up. I pressed my face against Nora's cold, still cheek. Rest now, baby. Daddy's taking you home. It's too cold here, and the people are too ugly inside. I held my daughter and turned and walked into the storm. Behind me, I heard Jason's voice. Babe, he's actually leaving. That kid, you don't think she actually? Susan made a dismissive sound. It's not that easy to die. It's all a performance. He's trying to make me feel guilty. Tomorrow morning, he'll be right back on his knees at the front door, begging for forgiveness. Forget him. Let's keep drinking. Oh, and post that video from earlier to your Instagram. Caption it something like, abusive ex stages breakdown to steal custody money. Let everyone see exactly what kind of man he is. I kept walking through the storm, listening to every word. Each one landed like a nail driven in a bone. I wasn't angry anymore. I mean it. Anger is cheap. It's a feeling for the living. For the dead, there's no need for anger. I carried Nora, one step at a time, out of the neighborhood, out of the place I used to think was home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My assistant calling. I picked up. My voice came out quieter than I expected, steadier than it had any right to be. Yeah, boss, you finally picked up. About the company. Never mind that. I cut him off. Initiate the judgment protocol. Silence on the other end. A full 5 seconds. Boss, are you sure? Once it starts, the Sullivan family is finished. Everything you've built over the past 5 years. I said initiate it. I looked down at my daughter's face, still and pale in my arms, and a slow, cold smile formed at the corner of my mouth. And give me a coffin. Best quality wood you can find. Also, contact every media outlet in the city. 3 days from now, I'm going to deliver Susan a gift she'll never forget. I hung up the phone. The wind screamed through the valley, throwing sheets of white across the empty mountain road. But to my ears, the world had gone completely silent. I looked down at Nora. Her small, pale face was framed by the dark wool of my sweater, the fabric stiffening as the dampness began to freeze. I didn't feel the cold anymore. My hands were numb, the cuts from the broken glass in the garbage can no longer bleeding, sealed shut by the frost. I walked, step after step, leaving the private estate behind. At the foot of the hill, where the snowplows hadn't yet reached, a sleek black Maybach sat idling, its headlights cutting through the white haze like the eyes of a waiting beast. The door flew open before I even reached it. Leo, my personal assistant, scrambled out into the snow. He took one look at me, my torn, bloody dress shirt, the gashes on my arms from the mastiffs, and the small, still bundle in my arms, and his face drained of all color. "Boss!" His voice cracked, trembling in the freezing air. What happened? "Open the door," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was flat, dry, devoid of any human cadence. Leo didn't ask another question. He rushed to open the back door, shielding my head as I climbed inside. The warmth of the cabin hit me, but it did nothing to thaw the ice in my chest. I sat on the leather seat, holding Nora tightly against me, refusing to let her go. "Drive to the city morgue," I said, "and call Dr. Vance. Tell him to meet us there. I want a full forensic autopsy. Every mark, every trace of exposure, the exact timeline of her asthma attack. I want it documented." "Yes, boss." Leo's hands shook on the steering wheel. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with a mixture of terror and profound sorrow. "And the Sullivan family?" "The protocol has begun," I replied softly, staring down at Nora's eyelashes, now starting to melt in the warmth of the car. "Let it run." 5 years ago, I had vanished from the business world. As the sole heir to the Apex Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate, I had grown weary of the endless betrayals and the hollow warmth of wealth. When I met Susan, she was the daughter of a struggling real estate developer, Marcus Sullivan, whose company was on the brink of collapse. Her father had once done a minor favor for my grandfather, and in a moment of sentimentality, I decided to help them. I hid my identity, marrying Susan under the guise of an ordinary, working-class man. I wanted a simple life. I wanted to see if someone could love me for who I was, not what I owned. Through dummy corporations and anonymous investments, I secretly injected billions into the Sullivan Group, lifting them from obscurity to the pinnacle of the city's elite. But wealth changes people. The moment the Sullivans tasted power, they began to look down on me. Susan grew cold, embarrassed by her deadbeat husband who stayed home to cook, clean, and care for our daughter while she climbed the social ladder. She reunited with Jason, her high school sweetheart, a man from a mid-tier logistics family, believing him to be her true equal. I had tolerated her neglect. I had tolerated her insults. I did it all for Nora, who deserved a stable family. But tonight, they took the one thing that kept me human. The city morgue was quiet, smelling of disinfectant and cold metal. Dr. Vance, a leading forensic pathologist who had worked for Apex for a decade, was already waiting. When he saw Nora, his professional composure faltered. He had met her once, a year ago, when I brought her to his private clinic for a routine checkup. "Mr. Ethan," he whispered, his eyes reddening. "Do the autopsy, Vance," I said, gently placing Nora on the stainless steel table. "Do it carefully. I need the legal evidence." "I understand." He bowed his head. I walked out into the corridor and sat on the plastic bench. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from Instagram. I opened it. It was a post from Jason's public account. It was a video, the exact footage of me climbing into the Mastiff kennel, edited to look like a chaotic scramble. The caption read, "Some people will do anything for money." Tonight, my girlfriend's abusive ex-husband showed up at her private residence, staging a fake medical emergency with his daughter to demand a multi-million-dollar divorce settlement. When we refused to be extorted, he actually climbed into our dog kennel to play the victim. Absolutely pathetic. Stay safe out there, everyone. Within minutes, the post had garnered thousands of likes and comments. What a sick freak. Using his own kid for money. He looks like a literal dog in there. Glad those mastiffs gave him what he deserved. Someone call child services on this deadbeat. I stared at the screen. The comments kept rolling in, a tidal wave of public outrage directed entirely at a man who was currently sitting in a cold corridor, waiting for his daughter's autopsy report. I didn't block them. I didn't report the post. I took a screenshot, saved it, and sent it to Leo. "Keep a record of every account that leaves a defamatory comment," I texted him, "especially the verified ones. We will deal with them later." 10 minutes later, Leo called. "Boss, Marcus Sullivan is panicking. He's been trying to reach the board of Apex Capital. Half an hour ago, our subsidiaries pulled all funding from their flagship new city development project. Every bank in the city has suddenly frozen their credit lines. They don't know why. Tell the banks to demand immediate repayment of all outstanding loans," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And contact the construction suppliers. If any of them deliver so much as a single brick to a Sullivan site, Apex will blacklist them globally." "Consider done," Leo said. "What about the coffin?" "White mahogany," I said. "Satin lining. Keep it simple but perfect. And prepare the Grand Hall at the Zenith Hotel for the morning of the third day." "But boss, that's the day of the Sullivan Group's 30th anniversary gala." Leo hesitated. "They've booked the grand ballroom there. They've invited the entire city's elite, including the media, to celebrate their upcoming merger with Jason's family business. A cold, faint smile touched my lips, though my eyes remained dead. I know, I said. That's why I chose it. The next 48 hours were a quiet, systematic dismantling. To the public, the Sullivans were still basking in their high society glory. Susan and Jason spent the day posting updates about their upcoming gala, showing off custom designer dresses and expensive jewelry. They were completely oblivious to the silent, tectonic shift occurring beneath their feet. By the afternoon of the second day, the cracks began to show. I sat in the dark office of my private estate, watching the financial markets. The Sullivan Group stock was in a free fall, dropping by 30% in a single trading session. My phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I recognized the caller ID. Marcus Sullivan, Susan's father. I picked up, but didn't speak. Ethan, is that you? Marcus's voice was frantic, stripped of the arrogant authority he usually held over me. Listen to me, you useless trash. Did you do something? Did you talk to someone at Apex? No, that's impossible. You don't have the connections. But the banks are saying our accounts are being closed due to high-risk associations. Is this your doing? Are you trying to ruin us because Susan wants a divorce? I remained silent, listening to his heavy, panicked breathing. Speak to me, damn it, he roared. If you think this little stunt will stop the divorce, you're dead wrong. Susan is marrying Jason, and his family is going to bail us out. We don't need Apex. We don't need anyone. Once the gala tomorrow is over, our merger will be finalized, and we'll be untouchable. Marcus, I said, my voice dropping the temperature in the room. He went quiet, taken aback by the absolute lack of emotion in my tone. Enjoy the gala tomorrow, I said, and hung up. A moment later, a text message arrived from Susan. Ethan, stop hiding like a rat. My dad told me you're refusing to sign the papers. Let me make this clear. If you don't show up at the Zenith Hotel tomorrow with the signed papers, I'll release the full video of you in the dog kennel to every major news outlet. I'll make sure you can never find a job in this city again. And take that little bastard of yours with you. She's been quiet lately, probably because you finally realized what a burden she is. Don't bring her near my sight again. I stared at the words. She's been quiet lately. My chest tightened, a brief, sharp pang of agony breaking through my numbness. I stood up, walked to the adjoining room, and opened the door. In the center of the room sat the white mahogany coffin. I walked over and looked inside. Nora lay there, dressed in a beautiful, soft pink dress I had bought her for her upcoming birthday. A birthday she would never see. Her face looked peaceful now, the blue tint gone from her lips, replaced by the gentle cosmetic work of the mortician. She looked like she was simply sleeping. I reached in and gently smoothed down a stray lock of her hair. Tomorrow, Nora, I whispered, Daddy is going to take you to a party. The morning of the third day arrived, cold and clear. The Zenith Hotel was the crown jewel of the city's downtown district, a towering structure of glass and steel. Today, the entrance was lined with red carpets, flashing cameras, and reporters from every major media outlet. The Sullivan Group's 30th anniversary gala was the event of the season, meant to solidify their status as a Tier 1 family. Inside the grand ballroom, the atmosphere was opulent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm, golden glow over the hundreds of guests dressed in tuxedos and evening gowns. Susan stood near the center of the room, wearing a stunning emerald green dress that hugged her figure. She held a glass of champagne, laughing at something Jason had said. Jason was dressed in a tailored white tuxedo, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. Marcus Sullivan stood nearby, talking to a group of investors, though his face was pale and sweat beaded at his temples. He was trying desperately to maintain a facade of confidence despite the financial ruin creeping up on his company. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies' voice echoed through the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. Please draw your attention to the main stage. Tonight, we celebrate not only 30 years of the Sullivan Group's excellence, but also a beautiful union. Let us welcome the CEO of Sullivan Group, Miss Susan Sullivan, and her partner, Mr. Jason Vance. The crowd erupted into applause. Susan smiled brightly, waving to the cameras as she and Jason walked up the steps to the stage. Thank you, everyone, Susan said into the microphone, her voice dripping with poise. Today is a milestone for my family. We have faced challenges, but we have always risen above them. And to those who try to drag us down, who try to use cheap, pathetic tricks to extort us, I say this, your time is up. On the massive LED screen behind her, an image appeared. It was a still frame of me from the video doorbell, looking disheveled and desperate. The crowd whispered, murmuring in confusion. This man, Susan pointed to the screen, her eyes cold and triumphant, is my ex-husband, Ethan. For 5 years, he lived off my family's generosity, contributing nothing. When I finally demanded a divorce, he resorted to the lowest form of manipulation, using a child's health to stage a scene at my doorstep, even going so far as to climb into my guard dog's kennel to make himself look like a victim. We will not be extorted, Jason added, stepping up to the microphone. Tonight, we are announcing a joint legal fund to prosecute individuals who use child abuse as a tool for financial gain. We want to show the world that truth always wins. The reporters in the front row began snapping photos furiously. The narrative was perfect, the strong, successful woman overcoming a toxic, parasitic ex-husband. But before the applause could begin, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. The sudden draft of cold air swept through the warm room, causing the chandeliers to sway slightly. The chatter died down instantly. Heads turned toward the entrance. I walked in. I was not wearing the torn, filthy clothes from 3 nights ago. I wore a perfectly tailored black 3-piece suit, custom-made by Seville Row, my hair combed back, my posture straight and commanding. The air of a defeated, begging man was entirely gone, replaced by a cold, suffocating authority that seemed to heavy the entire room. Beside me walked Leo, followed by 4 men in immaculate black suits. And between them, they carried a long, white mahogany coffin, decorated with a simple wreath of white lilies. The silence in the ballroom became absolute. The only sound was the rhythmic click of my leather shoes against the marble floor as we walked down the center aisle toward the stage. Susan's smile froze. Her eyes widened, first in confusion, then in deep disgust. "Ethan," she hissed into the microphone, her voice cracking. "What is the meaning of this? Security. Where is security? Get this lunatic out of here." But no security guards moved. In fact, several large men in dark suits, men Susan had never seen before, stepped into the ballroom and quietly blocked the exits, their hands clasped in front of them. "Ethan." Marcus Sullivan scrambled down from the VIP section, his face red with fury. "Are you insane? Bringing a coffin to our anniversary? Do you want to go to jail?" I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes fixed on Susan as we reached the foot of the stage. The pallbearers gently set the white coffin down on the raised platform directly in front of the stage. "Susan," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but with the ballroom's microphones picking it up, it echoed clearly in every corner of the room. "You asked me to bring my daughter's corpse if I wanted to play a tragedy." The crowd gasped. "I didn't bring a tragedy," I continued, stepping up the stairs of the stage. "I brought the truth." You're crazy," Susan stammered, backing away slightly, her hand gripping Jason's arm. "Jason, call the police. He's threatening us." Jason tried to puff out his chest, stepping in front of Susan. "Ethan, leave now. You're embarrassing yourself. That kid of yours is probably at home laughing at how stupid you are." I stopped 3 feet from him. The sheer, icy malice in my eyes made him freeze, the words catching in his throat. "Leo," I said, "run the video." "Yes, Mr. Apex." "Mr. Apex." The name hit the room like a physical blow. Marcus Sullivan froze in his tracks, his eyes darting from me to Leo, his brain struggling to connect the dots. Suddenly, the massive LED screen behind the stage flickered. The image of my edited dog cage video vanished, replaced by a high-definition video feed. It was the unedited, raw footage from the video doorbell from 3 nights ago. The audio was crystal clear. "Susan, Nora can't breathe. Open the door and give me her medication." My desperate voice echoed through the ballroom. The screen showed Susan raising her glass, laughing. "Ethan, are you seriously pulling this act just for that little bastard of yours?" The guests began to murmur, the atmosphere in the room shifting instantly from celebration to profound discomfort. The video continued. It showed the second-floor window opening. It showed the basin of ice water crashing down, turning to frost on Nora's skin. It showed her tiny body convulsing, her final, weak cry of "Mommy." Several women in the audience gasped, covering their mouths in horror. Then came the part where I crawled into the garbage to find the empty inhaler. The part where Susan demanded I bark like a dog. The part where Jason threw the real medication into the snow and poured foot-washing water over it, shattering the plastic. The entire ballroom was dead silent. Even the reporters had stopped snapping photos, staring at the screen with wide, horrified eyes. This is edited," Susan screamed, her face turning pale as paper. "It's a deep fake. He's trying to frame us." "Is it?" I turned to the audience, my voice calm, almost conversational. "Dr. Vance, please present the medical examiner's report." Dr. Vance stepped forward from the crowd, holding a thick, sealed document. He walked up the stage and handed it to the head of the City Medical Association, who happened to be an invited guest in the front row. "The autopsy was completed yesterday morning," Dr. Vance said, his voice carrying over the silence. "The deceased, Nora Sullivan, age 5, died of acute respiratory failure brought on by a severe asthma attack, compounded by rapid hypothermia caused by exposure to freezing water in sub-zero temperatures. The time of death correlates precisely with the footage shown on the screen." The head of the medical association looked through the documents, his face hardening. He looked up at Susan with utter disgust. This is a certified, legal autopsy report. There is no doubt. The child died of exposure and medical neglect. No, no, that's not true. Susan shrieked, her voice turning shrill. She was fine. She was always faking it. Ethan, you did this. You killed her to ruin me. Susan, I said, stepping closer to her. She flinched, trying to shrink back, but there was nowhere to go. For 5 years, I gave you everything. I built your family's business from a bankrupt shell into what it is today. I did it because I believed you had heart. But you didn't just break mine. You took Nora's life. You built our business? Jason let out a nervous, shaky laugh. Who do you think you are? You're a nobody. Marcus, tell him. Tell him who owns the Sullivan Group. Marcus Sullivan didn't speak. He was staring at me, his mouth hanging open, his knees visibly shaking. He had finally recognized Leo. He had finally recognized the logo on the documents Dr. Vance was holding, the seal of the Apex Group. Ethan, Marcus's voice was barely a squeak. You are the chairman of Apex. The question hung in the air, sending a shockwave through the entire ballroom. What? Susan turned to her father, her eyes wild. Dad, what are you talking about? He's a deadbeat. He doesn't have a penny. Silence. Marcus suddenly screamed, turning on his daughter, his face purple with rage and terror. Do you have any idea what you've done? He is the one who funded us. The billions we received, the contracts, it was all him. Susan went entirely rigid. She stared at me, her mind refusing to accept the reality unfolding before her. No, that's impossible, she whispered. You cooked for me. You cleaned the house. You wore cheap clothes. Because I wanted a family, Susan, I said softly. But you want a transaction. And now, the transaction is complete. I turned to Leo. Initiate the final phase. Leo nodded and pressed a button on his tablet. Within seconds, the phones of almost every business owner and investor in the ballroom began to chime. Oh my God, someone in the crowd muttered. The Sullivan Group's primary lender just filed for immediate liquidation. Look at the news. The city prosecutor's office has just issued arrest warrants for Susan Sullivan and Jason Vance for negligent homicide and child abuse. The double doors of the ballroom swung open once more. This time it was not cold air. A dozen uniformed police officers, led by the chief of police himself, marched down the aisle. Susan Sullivan, Jason Vance, the chief of police said, stepping onto the stage and presenting the warrants. You are under arrest for the murder of Nora Sullivan. You have the right to remain silent. Jason, do something. Susan cried, grabbing Jason's jacket. But Jason was already pale, his previous arrogance entirely gone. He tried to pull away from her, his voice trembling. It was her. She was the one who threw the water. She was the one who told him to bark. I didn't do anything. I was just joking. Jason, you coward. Susan screamed, lunging at him, her manicured nails scratching at his face. The police officers quickly stepped in, separating them and pulling their arms behind their backs, clicking the metal handcuffs into place. The cameras flashed continuously, capturing every moment of their undignified fall. The very media outlets they had invited to celebrate their triumph were now broadcasting their ruin live to millions of people. As they were being dragged down the stage, Susan looked at me, tears of panic and desperation finally spilling over her cheeks. Ethan, please, she sobbed, struggling against the officer's grip. I was wrong. I didn't know. I didn't mean for her to die. She's my daughter too. Please, save me. You have the money. You have the power. You can stop this. I stood at the edge of the stage, looking down at her. You told me that Nora's death would be a gift, I said, my voice cutting through her screams. One less person to split the inheritance with. She froze, the memory of her own words hitting her like a physical blow. I'm giving you your gift, Susan, I said. You'll never have to worry about the inheritance again, because by tomorrow morning, the Sullivan family will possess nothing but a criminal record. Ethan, no, Ethan. Her screams faded as the police dragged her and Jason out of the ballroom, their elegant clothes dragging along the cold marble floor. Marcus Sullivan fell to his knees in the middle of the aisle, weeping openly, realizing that his lifetime of ambition had been erased in a single night. I didn't look at him. I walked down the steps of the stage and stood before the white mahogany coffin. The guests in the ballroom stood in hushed, respectful silence, parting to give me space. I reached down and gently touched the smooth, polished wood of the lid. It's over, Nora, I whispered, a single tear finally escaping my eye, freezing as it ran down my cheek. Let's go home. I turned and walked out of the Zenith Hotel, the pallbearers following closely behind me, carrying my daughter into the quiet, peaceful morning.